Mike Rothmiller, you have a new book out. It coming out this week. Frank Sinatra and the Mafia Murders. And I know the story of Frank Sinatra being connected to the mafia is well known, but you've got some new information from your research that he was more closely tied with the mafia than anybody really suspected.
That's absolutely true. That's true. And my first look at Sinatra being tied to the mafia is when I worked LAPD's Organized Crime Intelligence Division. And they had a dossier on Sinatra that went back to when he was a teen idol and with all his mafia connections. And it was pretty much almost a lifetime connection between the mob and Sinatra. But during his heyday, he was certainly connected with the mafia. He wasn't a made man, but the mafia made him.
Yeah, they get payrolled him early in his career, got him out of. Well, let's start first. You open your book with Frank Sinatra Jr.'s kidnapping, and I always personally thought that those kidnappers were, first off, you'd find Frank Sinatra Jr., but you would never find the kidnappers because they probably would be killed by the mafia. You know, they would be floating in a barrel someplace off the East Bay or whatever, and so that was what hooked me on the book, was that, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right, Frank Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped, but how did that happen?
Well, basically, Frank Sinatra Jr. was into the entertainment industry. He was a singer too, and he was at Lake Tahoe and performing, and they get a knock on the hotel room door. He's having a meal, and in comes some guys, and they kidnap him. And everybody thought it was a mob kidnapping, but it wasn't. And so they kidnap him, they make a ransom demand, and they're driving him from Tahoe down to Los Angeles. And what it was, for a better term, like three college guys got together and said, hey, this would be a good idea. Won't this be fun and we can make some money, get $250,000. And this happened just a few days, about 2-3 weeks after the John Kennedy assassination. So there's a lot of people running around, law enforcement, they weren't sure what was going on. And so when Frank was told that Frank Jr. was kidnapped and he's being ransomed, now the average person, not all of them, but the average person would first call the police or call the FBI, something like that. He chose not to do that. His first call went to Sam Giancana, who was the godfather of the Chicago Mafia and who basically had Frank under his wing for many, many years. And Frank told him, hey, my son's been kidnapped. Can you help? Because Frank thought it was mob guys too. Giancana, okay, yeah, let me look into it. And so they hang up. Frank's next call went to Jimmy the Weasel Fradiano in Los Angeles and Johnny Roselli, who were big in the entertainment industry. And the Weasel, he was a hitman, and he was just happened to be in LA. And so he called him and said, hey, my son's been kidnapped. Can you help out? Yeah, I'll start looking into it. Don't worry, we'll get him, because they thought it was the mob too, some mob guys. And so Giancana is calling around, calling his soldiers, saying, hey, find him, because everybody thought it was a mob kidnapping. Even law enforcement intelligence thought it was that. Well, it wasn't. And so the Weasel starts coming up with names. Where he got them, nobody knows, but he went out and he started snatching these guys off the street who he thought was involved. And obviously he, for a better term, he interrogated them in a harsh fashion, and all these guys vanished. They've never been seen since. Boom, gone. And then as it turns out, here it was basically three college guys decided to pull this off. And who knows how many guys were taken out we know about 3 from Friday on, but from Giancana's calls, obviously some people were taken out from around the country. They thought, well, Larry so-and-so could have something to do with this because he's kind of a kidnap ransom guy. So they go snatch him, and they don't ask questions politely, as you would know.
No, I don't think so.
Forceful. And once they do that, that person's never leaving alive. And so Frank's call ended up getting quite a few people killed.
See, and and I did not realize. First off, I knew he was close to the mafia, because the argument always has been made that, well, the nightclubs were owned by mafia members, so you had to be in bed with the mafia if you wanted a singing career, or at least an entertainment nightclub career. But I didn't realize it was to the extent where Jimmy Dorsey, when he was with Sinatra, was with Jimmy Dorsey. I didn't know that Dorsey was making 43% of Sinatra's lifetime earnings. I mean, I thought Colonel Parker was bad with Elvis, but Jimmy Dorsey was close second there.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of money being taken from any entertainment. Well, for any deal, like that, being a manager or an agent. Yeah, it was pretty stiff, and I don't blame Frank for wanting to get out of that deal. And he did. He called in the guy who really started him was Willie Moriarty, and Willie was, for better term, the godfather of that part of New Jersey where Frank was from. And he kind of brought him up. He'd bring him into some of the clubs, let him sing for cigarettes and food. And that was pretty much it. And then Lucky Luciano and Moriarty, they started saying, well, the kid may have something here. And so they put up $50,000 to promote him. Now, this was a long time ago, so that's a lot of money. And that's what got him into becoming, for a better term, a teen idol. That's what started everything off. And then even the clubs that weren't owned by the mob throughout the country, well, when they got a call and said, we'd like to have you book Frank in for whatever, in most cases, they would have done it anyway because they could have made money. But it was always that helping hand, the calls coming from Sam Giancana or the Fischetti brothers or somebody like that, or Moriarty said, I think you really got to hire this guy. And so that's where he got his start in the singing industry, really becoming well known. And the two guys who he was very, very close to, or the Fischetti brothers, they were cousins of Al Capone, and they worked for Al Capone. And there's no doubt they were hitmen, but they were also into a lot of other stuff. And they took him under their wings, and Frank really admired them. And when he would travel back to Illinois, he would always stay with them at their house, one of the brothers. And all three of them would go around and do whatever they're going to do together. So he did that, one, because he owed them that, but also it was protection. And also he enjoyed the stature of being feared by people too. That happened in LA, that happened in Vegas, that happened everywhere. Hey, Frank is tight with the mafia. Don't mess with him, because he'll call his friends and they'll take care of you. So it was a very interesting business friendship relationship he had for decades with the mob.
How much of his, now we talked about Jimmy Dorsey taking 43% of what was going to be his lifetime earnings. How much did the mob get off his earnings?
They normally didn't take something. For instance, if he was signed to do a movie, they were getting him involved in other issues that they were gaining money on. For instance, if he was giving a concert, they may set it up where he would do a couple of them free, and they would take all the proceeds. When some guys opened up car dealerships, he would promote them, do a commercial for them, come back and do a live entertainment thing, and he would get a couple of cars, but also then they received a large chunk. It was just a matter of what he was doing. It was movies, it was singing, albums and so forth, and who got him involved. But they, in all likelihood, nobody knows how much they really took, made from him, but it certainly wasn't 43%.
I can imagine, yeah. So, he was at the Havana conference in 1946, and he always said that he was just a guest, which he was a guest, okay. But he was with an actress named Laura Gooding that you wrote in your book, and there was something that happened in his hotel room that really didn't make the papers, did it?
No, not in the U.S. and not in Havana either. But whatever reason, thought he was going to get hit. And when some guys started coming into the room, it wasn't clear. He kind of said his girlfriend that she did the shooting. She kind of said he did the shooting. So it's probably, trying to blame each other. But then they ended up killing this guy coming in the door who happened to be a cop and wasn't coming there to shake him down or hit him or anything. But he was coming in and all of a sudden it just vanished. It just disappeared. Take the body out. Frank's taken care of. And that was the end of it. Very quietly done.
I got to ask, how did you find all this? Now, I know he had an FBI file. How did you find out all this other information? Was that in the FBI file?
There was some in a lot in the FBI file. There was a great deal of information when I worked LAPD intelligence, because our intelligence files, our dossiers that were maintained on people were as extensive as J. Edgar Hoover's files on people. And so since Sinatra was located most of the time in Southern California, his dossiers were massive. And within his dossier were links to everybody associated with him. So all of those people had dossiers. And you start getting into it, there's just a wealth of information beyond what most people would think of. Mm-hmm. And it just at the time on Frank and on Marilyn Monroe, and once again, I kept a lot of notes, I made at the time. And so it's just, we got that. Then we spoke to people. I spoke to people in Nevada who knew him, and intelligence people in Nevada from the time, and who knew him and had access to all of their, if you want to say, their intelligence files too. And so speaking with them, got a lot of the information. And one in particular about, there was a time in Vegas when Frank was there for the Rat Pack, mm-hmm. and he was drunk, and he was in a hotel. And first, nobody knows how it started, but he got into a mouth contest, calling a pit boss various names. The pit boss didn't agree. The pit boss was a made guy for the Chicago mob, and he would have to be there overseeing things. And so they pulled Frank aside and basically, get out of here. And he was incensed, and so he called Sam Giancana, because it was Chicago that basically controlled Vegas then. And he said, I want this guy taken, I want him hit, I want this, that, but he embarrassed me and all this stuff. And they go, yeah, okay, what's his name? We'll take care of it. Well, what they did, they just got a hold of the guy, they called him, they had their guy in Vegas, talked to this pit boss, said, what happened? Told us, okay. So they just transferred the guy to Reno, Nevada, to a casino up there. And then Frank, when he came in the next time, said, where's so-and-so? He's been taken care of, Frank, on your request. And Frank thought he was buried in the desert, or he's in Lake Mead, so that's some of the weird things that you learn, the strange stories that actually occurred when you start talking to people. And one of the major stories we put in the book was about Frank trying to reclaim his gambling license in Nevada before the Gaming Commission. He lost it the first time because of his associate Sam Giancana being the hidden owner in the Cal Neva Lodge near Lake Tahoe. And so he was coming up again. And Harry Reid, the former senator from Nevada, he's deceased now, he was the head of the Gaming Commission. He said, there's no way in hell I'm giving him a gaming license. He's a bad guy, on and on and on. So Frank's attorney from LA gets a hold of an attorney, very powerful attorney in Nevada, who happened to be in the politics. He has a private meeting. He calls Harry, come up to this motel out in the middle of nowhere. I want to have a chat with you. So they chat with him. Harry leaves with a attaché case he didn't come in with. And the following week, Harry's pounding the drum that Sinatra needs his gaming license back because he's a good man.
Yeah.
From law enforcement, from intelligence over, they said that they believed it was the amount that he did get cash, and it was equal to 1 month's salary that Frank was going to get. Well, Frank was going to get $125K a month for this license, just being an entertainment director and consultant. So you look back then and say, yeah, that's quite a bit of money, but there are a lot of stories intelligence knows over there about Harry Reid.
In hearing you tell these stories and reading them in the book, I got the sense that that I was reading the nuggets of genesis of stories that appeared in the Godfather trilogy movies. You know, with the gaming commission license, or I mean, yes, it didn't go into like the same end of you know, with the dead prostitute in the I guess the senator's
Right.
bed, but or the horse head in the movie producer's bed. But I could see a genesis of those stories with Frank Sinatra from your book.
You're correct. A lot of those stories, matter of fact, I remember when I was working in television, I saw them and we said, Jesus, they got a lot of good information. You know, they just changed it a bit. You know, the one thing about, you know, you mentioned the senator killing the prostitute. Well, LAPD intelligence gathered a lot of information on senators and congressmen, and I saw a lot of that. So a senator with a prostitute, it's not that unusual, you know?
Yeah.
Dying in bed, no, that's unusual, you know, but, it's just the way it was and still is in a lot of senses. But yeah, then also the horse head issue. Frank wanted that part in From Here to Eternity, and they weren't going to give it to him. They had this decision, no way, no way. He had other people in mind. So Frank told his godfather, Moriarty, and those other ones about what happened. And they said, well, basically, that was it. We'll make him an offer he can't refuse. And they went in, put a gun to his head, said, you're going to do this or you're dead. When can I hire that man? It happened almost instantly, and that's how he got the position. But there are a lot of things within that movie trilogy that are based on fact.
See, and that's what I remember. I remember the story, like you said, about, you know, wanting to be in Here to Eternity. The other story I heard was that Ava Gardner went to the producer and said, "My husband would make." Well, she used other words, but my husband would make a good part for that movie, and that's how he got it. And I think that's a kind of like a sanitized version from Ava Gardner.
Very well, yeah, she was pitching for him too, which is understandable. But the studio said, well, that's nice, but no.
Yes.
You know, we're the money guys behind this doing it. But when they get, if you want to say a serious threat or a serious business proposition, then they listen. Is the only thing to do.
And going back to Frank Sinatra Jr.'s kidnapping, what did Frank Sinatra think when they actually found out it was just these three college guys who had, I gotta say, had one of the worst ideas I can ever think of a college person having? I mean, what did he think? Did he think that was for real, or that he was so sure it was going to be mafia related?
Well, from what we're able to learn from that, from documents that read, is that he wasn't quite sure. He didn't believe it at first. You know, said, no. Yeah, these three clowns, they couldn't do it. They wouldn't have the guts to do it. And he didn't believe for quite some time, but then basically when, if you want to say, confessions started to come in and Frank Jr. said, yeah, that's the guy, you know, then it's like, geez, where did this come from? It just came out of the blue, you know, it was just such a shock. And what he ultimately thought about is probably, he says, boy, these guys are idiots. They thought they could get away with this. They were going to end up dead, you know. But, you know, people do unusual things.
I got a feeling the alcohol was involved in that plotting.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see their SAT scores, you know. What was the strangest story that you found in your research?
Strangest.
Or funniest or
I think well, a couple of them I can't say, but I think the funniest was when he was being subpoenaed in LA County, and he basically told the DA and the grand jury and everybody, said, well, you know, you subpoena me if you can find me. So he basically, yeah, see if you can catch me, sort of thing. Well, what he did, he went down to Palm Springs, to his Palm Springs house, and that's where he was at. And so they couldn't find him. So finally, the chief of police turned it over to LAPD intelligence. It was called the Gangster Squad then, changed the name to the Organized Crime Intelligence Division, which I worked. So gave it to them, and I spoke with the son of the guy who got the subpoena from LAPD intelligence, and they went down. They found out that he was in Palm Springs. They drove down to Palm Springs, and they started going to hangouts where Frank would always go. And so they go, "Hey, is Frank here?" "Ah, he just left. He just left." They kept missing him. So they bump into this policewoman that they know from LAPD, is an attractive woman. And they say, "Hey, listen, we think he's at home. You want to come with us? You knock on the door, because he'll open the door for a woman. He wouldn't open the door for a couple of guys in the middle of the night. You know, he's thinking he's going to get whacked." And so she goes, "Sure." They go to his house. She goes up the door. She's knocking on, ringing the doorbell. "Frank, Frank," you know, so on. No answer. And so they kind of look around the windows and everything. Yeah, they can't see anything, but they think somebody's home. So it just happens to be the one detective from LA. He happened to be a very good lockpick. You know, he had a lockpick hit with him, and he said that the door was open, which I don't think so. Unlocked, right? But it doesn't matter at this stage. And so they go into the house, the two detectives, and they start walking down through the house, and they come up to this one bedroom, and they walk in, and there's a guy sleeping. He's snoring in there, and they look at him, and they go, "That can't be him," because he was bald. The toupee was sitting on the nightstand, and his false teeth were sitting on the nightstand. Right? And so they said, "That can't be him. That guy's too old." So they go down the hall to another bedroom. There's this gal in there, and they wake her up, and she's startled. They say, "Police says, where's Frank?" She goes, "Well, he's in the bedroom across the hall. That's where they just came out of." You know, so they walk back over there. They look at this guy again. They go, "God, that can't be him. He's bald and didn't have any teeth." You know, so they wake him up. Sure enough, it's Frank. You know, and they say, "Here's the subpoena." And so Frank, he's kind of coming around out of the sleep, and he realizes what happened. He kind of runs, follows in the door, and he screamed out, said, "You're lucky I didn't have a gun." But it's funny because most people knew that he wore a toupee, but how do you knew false teeth?
I didn't know
And then
that.
those other ones I was told by a major entertainer I talked to, and everybody would know this person's name. And
Male or female?
well, I won't even go that far.
Okay.
I said that Frank, they were at a function, and Frank was there, and Frank goes up the private elevator, and it goes up, they see it, and it comes right back down. And apparently he had a colonoscopy bag for a while, and which nobody knew. You know, I hadn't really heard that. He left the bag in the elevator. Yeah. And they said it had to be him. And because they watched the elevator go up and never stopped, hit his floor, and it came right back down.
Wow.
And this was coming from this major entertainer, you know, was there and told me about it. So
my gosh.
a lot, but you know, you look at anybody throughout their life, there's going to be some funny stories and some bizarre stories. I won't tell you mine, but
well, I tell you what, Mike Rothmiller is the author, and the book is Frank Sinatra and the Mafia Murders. Mike, I appreciate you taking time to be on Lights, Camera, Author today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.